So I have the first hand. It is down here at the front. Perhaps you'd say who you are and what your question is.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, Anna Sunter from Hertfordshire County Council. Now, I've been working in what was called intelligent transport systems and then became smart mobility since the mid-1990s. Now, essentially, I've heard a lot of these conversations about technology and transport, how it's going to transform the reality of mobility in Britain. And I worked in Brussels with the European Union on the 5th Framework Programme. Again, there was a lot of research saying very soon our lives are going to be transformed and, you know, transport will be unrecognisable. And here we are in 2024, and the jargon may have changed, but the issues are still the same and they're still waiting to be addressed. Now, as you know, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis as well as local government financial challenges. So my question really is, in terms of the financial situation, how realistic is it that we're going to be moving towards these technology aspirations within the next 5 years, say, or is that really going to be something that limits us and, you know, prolongs it yet again?
Let's give our UK reps a moment to think about the answer to that and pose the question: what's it like in the Netherlands? What's the position, financially? Is everything grinding to a halt there? Is money running out? Are things too tight to mention?
Yeah, maybe from a local city, there's always not enough money. That's for sure. I fully recognize what you said there: smart mobility, dynamic traffic management, ITS. Every 5 years, there's a new fashionable name. But in the end, for us, it's about making impact, and it starts with small steps. And every step we can make is one step that fits closer to the end goal we have. And it will always go slower, but yeah, do we look at the end goal, or are we satisfied with every step we take? And for us, it's the last one.
And Menno, I mean, you're working nationally as well. So what's the vision financially that you're seeing?
So I think the answer is not in the technology, but in the approach. So if we continue to do pilots and to tailor stuff, every project a bit different, we can never get to affordable CITS services and deployments. So it's both for basically for all the actors in the ecosystem. I think it's time to think about the approach. And if you look at IT in general and how you do deliver scalable IT services, then you simply need to standardize. So for authorities, this is a key question also. So as long as you want to do things a little bit different in your own area or in your own region or even in your own country, you will be in a way a hurdle of getting affordable CITS services. And so I see this from an even not a national but an international perspective. And I think here is the answer to get affordable, because it's actually doable. There's lots of technology already there that you can use. It's not needed to replace everything, but open it up and then focus on these use cases. So that's what we see. We see it happening in the Netherlands, in Belgium, also in the Nordic countries, where they adopt these standards, start to work outside their own country, and we are successful in getting deployments to large scale. And then I do think in the longer future, there will be very serious return on investment benefits for authorities, especially when you think about replacing physical equipment more with data, having smarter, doing things in a smarter way, maybe also reducing a bit of labor, because that's a problem also everywhere to get skilled people. So that's sort of my answer.
Okay, Kerry, I'm just wondering to what extent, I'm guessing here, but from your perspective, very much a matter of whether Michael, whether the national government is going to come up with new grants and new funding, or is this actually becoming part of the warp and weft of your road maintenance activities?
So obviously can only speak for Hull as my example, but the experience I've got with the pressures we've got is the lack of funding. Now we are seeing more funding coming through from government, which is really helpful. But what it does do then is identify that we've got a skill gap now, and we've lost staff retention. So that's a pressure as well. So it's great that the money's coming through, but it's identifying that there's a pressure that we are to now fill in that gap with skills, and which is why the AI is such a scheme that we've done with Simplify has been really beneficial to us.
Okay, well, Michael, you've had plenty of time to think of the answer. The answer is how much money?
Well, the good news is that earlier today I've actually found a treasure chest filled with Spanish doubloons, so everyone's got all the funding they need. In seriousness though, I think a lot depends on how you see the benefits coming out of all of this, because I agree with you, we have had lots of promise about the future of technology prior to now, and it's been hard to build the business cases. I've been on the front line of making and losing many of those business cases in the past. What I think is changing now, two things. First of all, there is more low-hanging fruit. The fruit comes down lower and lower every year as the world around us gets more sophisticated. So someone gave a shout out to Paul's work in Portsmouth about the IVS system that he's managed to get into vehicles. That has been done well within local authority resources, because just the kit necessary for doing it is out there. It's about putting the wires together. It's not about sinking bits of metal into the ground anymore. And that, I think, is new, and I think the potential of that is seriously under-realised and undervalued. And I think as it starts to become clear, oh, you mean we can do that now? That's the people will start to join the club in a more serious way. So I think being able to articulate the benefits of that, being able to really say, this isn't some abstract thing about where we're going to be in decades from now, but about what you can put in somebody's dashboard right here and right now. That's is the prize. We actually did a demo down at Millbrook for the TTF come see it operate session back in October, in which we were going to show a system which you could literally use on with our messages and our tech on the dashboard of a new Vauxhall that's just come off the production line. Now that level of integration is unprecedented, I think, and people will start to grasp that. Second thing, and this may sound a little uncollegiate, so please treat this as being slightly off the record. Do bear in mind that the cost differential between what you might call conventional upgrades to transport in an area, building a ring road, let's say, or a big bypass, that's getting more expensive. Technology is getting cheaper. If you want to do something on a local political level about transport, you'll have a cheaper set of options around technology than you will have had about what you would think of as the more conventional applications. And we want to try and make that an easy investment choice for people from a traffic and technology point of view. So with that in mind, I think the local politics might give you a bit of an opportunity around this that didn't previously feel quite as strong. And I'm quite hopeful we can take that momentum and use that to go and make technology a bit more real and a bit less abstract for people.
I'm left wondering also whether part of the issue here is that going back to the pictures you put up there, and I'll check in a minute whether that vision of the future, it's always dark in the future, have you noticed? Whether that
gets cancelled in 2042, yeah.
But whether the issue is because some of the things that are being developed here, the street is going to look the same. It might feel a bit different and it might work better, but it doesn't look any different. And if I'm a local elected member, if I'm a member of Parliament, if I'm the Secretary of State for Transport, what am I going to stand next and be photographed with if all I've got is a slightly smoother flowing bus service? Is that something? Is it that somehow politically the benefit here is quite a hard one to grasp? How is that with your bus priority measures there?
The benefits of it, well, it was really taken up quite quickly with the press interest. And you're right that the member, the portfolio holder, was stood next to a traffic signal. That was, that's all he could stand there for his photo to sell the product. But it was more about, I think, the PR and the wording that supported it. I think we had to really sell that more than what a picture would do. So it is a bit difficult to sell the vision, but the interest was there, and it's had following on media interest as well. Even Calendar News ran an article on it. So there's definitely an interest there, and the comments and the feedback's always been real positive.
And how was it in Helmond? Were people, I mean, obviously you and the authority were enthusiastic, you were keen to get the sector in and to do things, but what about those citizens whose lives you were looking to improve? Were they enthusiastic too?
Yeah, I think that really depends on the citizen and how interested you are in the benefits you can achieve from it. But one example, which is currently active also because of Talking Traffic, is an app. There are several apps which give you some priority when you're on a bike. And if I mention that to somebody, everybody says, what's the name of the app? Can I download it now? Yes, you can. To be honest, for emergency services, nobody cares unless you're dying and waiting for an ambulance, I would say, or your house is on fire. And that is something we also should bear in mind. We think that traffic is just there, a road is just there. We think it's normal, that it's a safe situation in the end. That's in the end what it's about. If we can improve road safety by 1 or 2%, probably all of us will never notice it on an individual basis. And there's a difference as well. What can be felt from an individual, and what do you see on a local level if you look at bigger numbers?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if you feel as a consequence that the bright new technological future is a bit more of a reality in Hertfordshire than you thought before you had those answers.
That's been very helpful, thank you. Just another thing I forgot to mention in the course of the question, of course, is getting a political will behind this as well. Because sometimes, politicians, I suppose understandably so, can be a little bit risk averse. And so it's bringing them on the journey, and how to promote those benefits, I think, is going to be key to getting things to progress a bit more quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in a massively good move here, we're going to move all the way across the table to you, sir.
Hi, it's Sunil Badea from Coventry City Council, Transport Innovation Manager, and it's an observation and a question. Is it time now that we are in a position to actually start using some funding? We talked about financial implications and the lack of funding. We have an opportunity now to collaborate with the European partners with the Horizon 2020 funding. We've got funding from our side. We seem to be, as mentioned previously, that we seem to be innovating, dropping off, innovating, and we're in that vicious cycle using the NPP platform, which we've rolled out in Coventry. Fantastic learning where we've utilized all that collaborative work, sharing. Now that particular platform, can we share that with your city? In exchange, the development that's done in your city, can we bring it back to UK? That way, that money goes a little bit more further. But is that an opportunity? And it's a question to the panel. Is that something that we need to look at and investigate? Because I think that collaboration would work well, and we would be able to stretch our money and fundings a lot further.
So just to make sure I've got the question right, is there a case for greater multinational cooperation? Is that sort of twinning, or is that
Yes.
beyond twinning?
There is opportunities, and I'm sure the group and the attendees will be aware that there is funding available with the Horizon 2020 program with the European partners. We've got the DFT funding here. If we do that collaboration, then we will be able to do a lot more with a lot less money, if you see what I mean, because some innovations have already been done, and we can share those.
Well, again, let's start again with Helmut then. Is there an appetite, or has there been cooperation? You've talked about cooperating with other places within the Netherlands, but how about beyond the Netherlands?
Yes, Helmut was also very active over the past 50 years, also in Horizon 2020. And yes, I think we can learn a lot from collaboration, because every situation is a bit different. And with every lesson we learn, we can try to improve the standards that are being used. And in the end, to learn, we need to make faults, I would say. And Horizon 2020 is there to make faults, to be honest. And the more faults we make, the faster we will learn, I guess. So please, and Helmond as well, and I think there are a lot of other European cities as well, are really open for collaboration with UK partners.
So before I'm going to come to you next, Menno, because I think there is a particular angle here for the supply side, because very often you are working with different cities in different places, and you can do some of that joining up that otherwise might not happen. But I'm actually going to come back to you, sir, briefly on, there is enthusiasm. So what do you think, what would you find helpful to make it happen? What's the missing piece here? We've got some money on the table. There's some European money on the table. That's good. What is it you want Michael to do?
The project Michael mentioned earlier, to say this is the funding available. How can we link that with Helmond? What are the gaps? Where do we want to be? We know what we've done. We know what we've done with the NPP. We know what we've done with the digitising the traffic regulation order. What's the next step? We can trial it here. We can do it. Is Hellman done something like that? You've got the Glossa working. We've done Glossa here. We've got very good test beds within the West Midlands. You know, we've done a lot of work with innovation in that transport sector. One thing that has been missing is the new emerging transport, which is the urban air mobility. Put that into the equation, how can we then have a collaboration? Because if I remember right, and we've done some work with the Horizon 2020 funding, where you have to have a collaboration. So if you've got European partners, you've got UK partners, industry and academia, that forms a good collaborative approach to putting that package together, and then we can actually start looking at innovation more further, and business as usual becomes a standard.
Okay, well, Michael, have a muse on where that would fit into your timeline of events that you're organising. But Menno, I did say I'd come to you. So, as a supplier, are you able to look across different cities and play something of the role that we're looking for here, and be able to say, oh, you know, this is interesting because they've been wrestling with it over here, and there's an answer to what you're trying to achieve?
So we're active in many countries in Europe now, and we see this sort of interest in collaboration everywhere. And usually it's between, for instance, national road authorities like to get involved with other national road authorities, and cities like to talk to cities. There are some initiatives in Europe from Urtico, for instance, Moonshot, that can also be helpful. So, but yes, we are sometimes a matchmaker there, where we just basically exchange email addresses, introduce people to each other, and then of course it's for them. When it comes to Horizon Europe, it's of course research, and there's a downside there because it needs to be new and spectacular and for the long-term future. So I would say in terms of collaboration and have impact on the short term, use look at the projects and deployments that have been done, and take the best practices from there and existing standards, and then you can have impact, sort of, how do you say it? And you can take the advantage from that. It will definitely save budget.
Okay, Michael?
So the question about collaboration and cooperation is one we keep coming back to. And I think it goes back to the previous question, why doesn't the world change as much as you think it does? I think it's partly because all the answers lie between different people's worlds, and that is something we don't really spend enough time on, certainly in central government. We like to think it's a top-down, go and build a motorway and come back when you're done kind of a job, and it ceased being that decades ago, I think. That gets you into the question as to how you're going to go and organise and encourage cooperation. And I think the National Parking Platform is a good example of that in some ways. We have learnt through experimentation and planning that once you have figured out how to make a relationship work and figured out how to scale it up and down, you've actually done a lot of the challenge there, and you need to try and figure out how to do things like that then can lead on and unfold their full momentum. And again, that's quite different from how we tend to do piloting within DFT. I am hopeful that one of the things we'll do on the back of Roads to Tomorrow is we'll actually start to go and make ourselves look back on two things within the department. One, how we build business cases around tech. And two, how we deal with pilots and knowledge generation. Because I think actually we do lots and lots and lots of piloting work that then kind of just fizzles out. Whereas actually what we need to do is pilot something and say, oh, does this work? Okay, it does work. Okay, if it works, can it scale up? Yes, it can scale up. Okay, if it's scaling up, is this something that's worth making more a part of our business? Is it worth even making mandatory? And having that sense of a step-by-step journey. If we could chart that out with new things coming through and intelligently feed trials on the ground, like been going on a lot in Coventry, for example, into that, I think then you're on a conveyor belt that's going to take you to the future. Whereas if you just keep piloting and piloting and piloting and piloting and piloting, eventually everyone's going to lose interest and wander away, which I think is a bit of a fail for us. So yeah, we need to figure out how to get the knowledge and the relationships to work, and that probably will be the biggest thing we can do within the team in the near future, I'd like to think, which will get that to change in the next couple of years.
I mean, it sounds like you've got the makings there of one of the workshops that you're talking about, and I can spot at least one volunteer for taking part in it, so that would be good. My own prejudice, we're going to come straight to your questions here, but my own prejudice is a point that Menno just made, which is we could all spend, and I have, lots of time producing best practice guides and documents there's nothing quite like being introduced to someone who, with the sort of, oh, you'll find it interesting to talk to this person because they've been wrestling with the same thing and they've got a bright idea that they're trying. Nothing quite like actually having that conversation. Right, your question, sir.
Richard Barrington from Angoka, and I'm not going to mention cybersecurity. Oh, damn. My question here is to see that picture of the Netherlands and see all the cities and all that connectedness. For me, and it goes to your point about pilots and how do we tried, I was in the Cabinet Office for a couple of years and we tried to do something called a future procurement commitment. In other words, you come up with something that solves this problem and we guarantee we will buy it across the public sector. Because what's happening is we continue to see lots and lots of pilots and trials, but there is no path to take that pilot to scale to achieve regional or national impact. So my question really is around how do we do, is there a mechanism we can do that? What we heard this morning was DFT acting as the glue, facilitating some quite significant changes. The single parking app, for instance. That is a major, I have got 8 on my phone. Sorry, I know you're not, but you're facilitating that data exchange that enables new services potentially to be created. Is there something that can be done that would enable some of the, particularly with the innovation coming out through the ITMF competition, that will take those successful projects and enable them to scale, that will give them the blue tick that means that other local authorities can buy them with certainty and assurance rather than having to go through their own procurement process, because this is where everything gets stuck. As you said, we do great pilots, but then it can't scale. What is the mechanism that you can put in place as DFT, as the community, that means that when somebody does something amazing, that it can then be adopted more broadly? Because that's what's missing. Sorry, in my opinion.
Well, let's ask. And indeed, let's ask first up. Helmond is a place where things have been trialled and experimented with. Does that mean you're a complete outlier in the Netherlands, or is there a greater sense that once something's been trialled in Helmond, other cities are rapidly adopting it?
I think it is. And one example is the ambulances, as what I mentioned. We were one of the first with the fire brigade, even before talking traffic, etc. And what you see is that things we learned out there are now in the current standards and can be utilized by Manoj to make sure for the ambulances it works in roughly the same way. And the faults we see on a national server side, which is not being Manoj, but on the side of the ambulances, that can be implemented for the next scale-up for the fire brigade, because they will also be connected to the platform from Manoj. That, in the end, it's by learning by doing. But what it does help is that there's also some, that the national government is also involved and sets a standard or makes sure the software, in this case from Manoj, is there in place, because then we don't have to buy it ourselves as a local authority. Because if everybody needs to buy that kind of software by themselves, then it's becoming really difficult, I agree.
And I'm actually going to come to you, Kerry, next, because it just strikes me that you've given us an example. This is what you've done. This is what it's achieved. Are you getting a sense that other places are coming to you saying, how did you do that? Can we copy that? Or indeed that colleagues in the Transport Department are saying, we want to make more of your example? I'm guessing the answer is sort of yes, because otherwise you wouldn't be here doing the presentation. But do you get that sense of getting the ball rolling from what you've learned?
Yeah, I think for Hull itself, definitely there's the interest to roll that out to other areas, and we want to tackle a lot of the issues we've got in the city. But I know also the team have been contacted by other authorities that are wanting to speak to us about what we've done and to learn lessons from the good and the bad, really, to be able to move it into their areas as well. So I think there's definitely an interest and appetite for it to keep going.
Okay. Michael, what do you reckon? Another one of your workshops to be had here with this theme?
Well, when it comes to what's been happening in Hull, and indeed what's been happening in Hertfordshire and other places on traffic signals, we're actually very, very glad about the data that's come through because it's letting us do the same thing again. We want the allocation we've got this year to be the first of many, ideally, and taking the data we've used, Darren was saying earlier, using it again and again and again to create a repeatable cycle. That's a win for us all, I think, if we can pull that off. On the question of scaling up more broadly, yeah, it's really interesting how we can do this because tech doesn't fit again with the kind of the government top-down approach to doing this stuff. If you think about the apps that have taken off and gone viral in our times, they don't work by going and doing one place, then one place, then one place, then one place. You prove something works, and then it just spreads like a virus. And being able to get that sense of prove the concept and then scale up and make it work in a big way. We're hoping to go and do that with a national parking platform. I mean, we talk about this being a thing that makes apps work. It's also the business process behind it that actually unlocks that. So yes, no procurement to get into the system. Having something which is a platform that can scale up and up and up and up and up without falling over. Building a bigger market so that you get the economies of scale and the synergies that are within all of that, and you unlock more value with each layer you put on, grow geometrically. All that logic is going to have to play through there. I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out because I think we could prove some concepts there that we could recycle in a lot of other places. But actually, I mean, for real-world demonstration, this hasn't been done. I mean, talking traffic and where Monitor's got to is probably one of the best examples I know. I really want to hand the microphone over to you, Menno, because I think you know more than any of us would do about this.
In fact, I have another presentation about that. So, but I think so. A key element in talking traffic and in the deployment in the Netherlands was to me the public-private governance structure that we have in place there. And we have a white paper that we wrote together with the authorities on this, but it's sort of a combination of committees where there's a strategic level and a more operational level, and especially in these operational levels where the standards are defined, public and private stakeholders are joined and work together on these standards. And that includes also standards for procurement, so a set of standard specifications that every city now uses, and so that's beneficial for the cities, also definitely for the suppliers, of course, and in the end for the use case. So I think having that governance setup where public and private can come together to agree on, for lack of a better word, the code of conduct on privacy, security, standards, and also maybe ambitions. I think that's actually key. Now, this is the second time I'm here. I'm at the TTF conference, but it seems to me that this is very close to something like that. So maybe it's actually something that you already almost have.
Well, that was certainly our ambition and the ambition of those of us in the room who had a hand in setting it up. So that's positive. Now, we've got time for one more question. I've got a sense I might have an inkling of what this might be about. And in my mind is something you said, Luke, very early in your presentation, which was the clarity of vision that you had, that this was all about, I think something like, it was like creating a better lifestyle for your citizens, something like that. But let's see.
Steve, you know me too well. So Anna Jordan from Alcura Technologies. I suppose, firstly, an observation, there may be a bit of a question. I'm super enthused to see the kind of roads to tomorrow and this vision that we're setting out, and it's been really interesting to hear from all the working groups this morning around what each different kind of sector and segment of the technologies that we're seeking to develop are seeing as the future of what could happen next. And yet we've heard questions around this continued gap between the ambition of the technology and the kind of vision of what can happen and the adoption. And so even in some of the slides we had just now, what I'm really curious to understand is how does that roads to tomorrow pair with the existing working groups, those who are trying to seek to advance things like UTMC or traffic signals technology, how that ties back into the ITMF? Do we think of it as a corralling force to try and kind of cut the silos down and have an idea of what we think about as the future of any of these places working together better? Or how do we think about defining what good looks like so that all these working groups aren't just kind of spinning wheels, but actually getting that adoption moving forward?
Well, I would say the challenge that we have historically had with dealing with a lot of stuff to do with tech on roads is in selling it to, well, within government, is selling it to the top of the pyramid. It's easier to go out and, yes, get something you can get a photograph of when you open it up and be on the page of things. But look, a new train, how exciting. What I think we want to try and do with Roads to Tomorrow is to give a sense as to the combined potential of all those different things that are going on. There's lots of amazingly good work coming out of the individual working groups here. I'm incredibly proud to have any association with what's going on here because of the number of different things that are being improved in a way that could reach millions of people. We need to tell that story about, this isn't about what the traffic signal is saying, it's about how someone's journey feels and how you can communicate that sense of impact. It's about going from the 20th century to the 21st. It's giving a story that would work in the head of a politician who may not necessarily be somebody who is dyed in the wool, excited about technological standards or similar, but might get that big, broad picture of here's what I'm doing by standing up and supporting this and making it happen. Because when we get the authority, the mandate to go out and do these things, it makes a big difference to what we're able to deliver on the ground. So on UTMC modernisation, for example, being able to talk about how many hours we're saving up and down the country, that's how we get the opportunity to overcome those political hurdles and to get that sense of enthusiasm together to actually shift what's happening. The inertia that we have to handle in dealing with the road network is unbelievably huge. Shifting it even a tiny bit requires a lot of coordinated effort. And it's getting us to go and apply our leverage together in a way that's going to be mutually supporting, which I'm really hoping Roads to Tomorrow will be able to provide across it all. I hope that doesn't feel too woolly as an answer. I mean, I'm very conscious that's kind of a very high-level, cloudy way of doing it. But to be honest with you, I think the actual precise work of changing things is something we're reasonably good at. It's just we haven't managed to go and get our impact collectively together in one really good shove, which in the Netherlands you've been able to do from what we've seen. You've managed to go and make that case in a way that we haven't been able to do. And I think for the magic of getting to the place where we might be on a panel over in some other country saying, look what we did, that's about us, I think, just joining up and being one team in telling our story.
On which note, either Darren has 5 questions or he's telling me that I've got 5 seconds before the session has to wind up. So I think I know which it is, and the session has to wind up. So just before we do, in an echo of something Andy Graham said earlier in the event, I too am a trustee of the Rhys Jeffreys Road Fund. I want to draw your attention to the cards that are on the table. There is some more money to be had here, placed to the point that Kerry was making about skills. If you or if your teams or the people in your teams are looking to get qualified, to get develop their knowledge, develop their skill set, particularly in the areas we're talking about here at TTF, there's some potential money on the table there, so do take advantage of that. But in the meantime, may I ask you to thank our panel.